Okay, so hello again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation from the HPC Certification Forum. And I am happy to welcome here Julian Kunkel from the University of Göttingen, who will introduce the HPC Certification Forum, the activities and the role, and also the HPC certification strategy process. And then he will also tell us what the HPC Certification Forum needs. After the presentation, we will have space for your questions, and we will also start the conversation or discussion about possible opportunities for collaborations and how we could potentially support. So welcome, Julian, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Martina. Let me get started. So first I want to motivate the HPC Certification Forum. I think we all know that not all users that use HPC systems possess the right level of training. That leads to inefficient usage of HPC systems because you basically waste the resources, and it also leads to frustration. And this kind of lost potential is something that we had in mind. We want to ensure that people get a good training that saves compute time and costs. But looking at that, you quickly identify that the user background is very diverse and the goals of the different users differs a lot. Basically, science is mostly the goal, HPC is just the vehicle. And a lot of users, they just need to run an application to complete their PhD. Learning is tricky because users sometimes need to be convinced to understand that certain IT skills are beneficial for their task that they have at hand. There exist too many different training materials, and it's very difficult to compare the trainings of two data centers. Both may say, I have a training regarding MPI, but what does it actually cover? And it's also tricky for data centers to verify the skills of users. Maybe you want to give access to large-scale systems only to users that have a certain minimum skill set. And of course, we have a big confusion of the trainers and these HPC practitioners regarding the skill set, which was my example. What does MPI mean? What does Slur mean? What does something mean when you have learned about it? So what is the HPC certificate? Or I have certain on my agenda. I will firstly talk about the HPC Certification Forum, then about the strategy, then the needs of the HPC CF, and then for the conclusions. So what is the HPC Certification Forum? The goals of it is to create a fine-grained HPC knowledge representation, which we call competence standard. You can imagine it as a puzzle, a big puzzle that you have with all these individual pieces that represent different skills. Yeah, so what competencies should exist? How are they defined? And we want to support navigating kind of this puzzle for the different types of users. Also, the goal was to establish international certificates attesting the knowledge such that you can compare if someone has a skill MPI basic 1 or something, that means something. And we have support an ecosystem around the HPC competences by tools and so on. So the scope of the forum, this HPC Certification Forum, is that it is the central authority for competencies, the representation, the certification, and support. There is a limitation to the forum that it is not providing any content. So there is no training provided by the forum. It doesn't also not create a curriculum. Yeah, this is the responsibility of the universities or the different centers. But it does create this mapping, what does a certain skill mean, and it does want to certify these skills. So the HPC Certification Forum exists since 2018. It was a spin-off from a funded project that we had. It's now an international body, independent body that is loosely organized. We have a steering board, we have members, associate members, and so on. And we, as activities, we mainly try for this curation and maintaining of these competence standards and the tools and ecosystem around them. So there are a lot of processes that are documented on the link that you will get when you get my presentation. And of course, it's all available online. We have different people on the steering board. I don't want to read that. In terms of organization, we have a web page as a central hub. We have mailing lists. We have a monthly public meeting on our Slack channel. We have monthly meeting of the board, and we aim to have an annual general assembly. Due to COVID, we had some struggles in the last 2 years with that point. Data handling, so everything that we develop is available in the open on this GitHub. An exception is the examination questions, for good reasons. Talking about strategy, when we talk about these competence standards, we need to classify the competencies. We talk about skills. A competence is, we say a competence is typically a skill that someone has obtained. And this can be mapped out in a tree. So we have a tree that can be expanded. So each point that you see here is actually can be expanded quite a lot. And we organize this in a skill tree for different types of knowledge, like basic knowledge, HPC knowledge. Then we have skills that are mostly focused around using the HPC system, skills related to software development, skill related to performance engineering. We started with something like administration, and we added big data analytics as well. So this is hierarchically organized, but it also means that these skills can be linked between the different kind of skill subtrees here as well, because some of them are useful across the line. Here's an example of a high-level skill. It's in the skill in the use 1.1 tree. So you will find it here, use 1, which is about cluster operating systems. And then a sub-skill of it, which is not shown in the graphics, is about command line interface. And there we provide for each of these skills a small, well, we aim to provide a short background information that helps people to find it when you search for it, you know, and so on, and should explain the practitioner why this is useful. It has an aim. Why do you want to learn this? And what should people be able to do? And then we formulate everything as learning outcomes for the practitioners. And this is just a subset. So all these learning outcomes, of course, must be examinable in the sense that we can write our exam, our online exam, what I will talk about, and then we can create certificates for them. Yeah, we talked a lot about what is the granularity of skill descriptions in the past and had discussions. So what is the right granularity? What we came up with is that on a leaf level, which you can't see here, we would have a skill that typically covers 1 to 4 hours of training. So that is something you can convince a practitioner, okay, you need to have this knowledge about Slurm basics, for example, to proceed with your work in your cluster. Now, because it's useful for you. And yeah, that is a small thing. It's not like you have to do 10 weeks of a course or like a lecture, which is huge, because that will lead often to the case that the students will not attend it because they just need to know this little piece to get their work going in the IT world, such that they can make their PhD in chemistry or whatnot. So 1 to 4 hours lecture. And we organized the skill tree. I talk about this in a hierarchical fashion based on this kind of different roles that we find most people have. Is it administration? Is it using? Is it developing? And so on. And then how do we make sure, this is a typical question that we get, how do we make sure that what we have in the skill tree is the right set of skills? Yes, that's a very tough question. I mean, how does a trainer know that he teaches the right things? Well, we have to talk a lot to the HPC communities and the practitioners, and they tell us this is important. Also, we talk with the vendors or the software developers of software such as MPI and so on, and they can now adopt skills, and then they can tell us this is the basic things how to you need to know to make good use of it on different cluster systems. Okay, so we get feedback from the community, and therewith we build basically this set of skills. So what is the status of it? So we have a version of the competence standard online. We have about 250 skills identified. I'm sure some of them will go away as well because we have over-engineered this a little bit, but there will also be quite some missing. Now, all of these skills, they are managed in a Git repository. This is basically a markdown files. Each of the skill is a markdown file. We have access via our wiki, which provides a layer such that people can online edit those skills. And we have also a RESTful API. We have a lot of processes that are all documented on our webpage. We have processes, for example, such that experts can adopt skills. like you become a skill curator of the software product in your field of expertise. You know, like in performance engineering, for example, you could imagine that someone from Barcelona, for example, takes care of Parava or something like that, because you guys are the developers of Parava, and so on. So there could be this kind of maintenance. It's similar to code maintenance, and we started working with potential sponsors, but this is a chicken and egg problem here, because the vendors typically ask, how many, that's awesome, how many people did you certify? And then we say, yes, we are in the process to get people certified, but we need to get these things done before we can certify people. And they say, yeah, maybe you do this first. But then we say, well, yeah, we need some kind of funding to do that, because the process is very slow and we don't want to wait 20 more years. And then this is a chicken and egg problem. Good. We have also prototypes, of course, for various environments. One is our examination prototype. I will show this, which is for a limited exam. And, you know, in terms of these processes, yeah, we have like badges that we think people could put on their training material and say, okay, I train this certain skills. And we have some status in terms of adoption. I will talk about that. So again, all our developments are under open licenses, except for the examination questions, which is only for few people. This is an excerpt of the wiki, and you can navigate the tree, but there are various ways of navigating the tree. Like I said before, you can access the Git and do a pull request and all these things. How can people contribute? So we have this web page with the markdown version that you can kind of do things. You can do pull requests. We have also a mind map which pulls down the structure. And this, in fact, we have tools to synchronize the mind map with our markdown files in the Git. And we use here FreeMind tool. And we have Slack, and we have, you know, all our process section that you can find. We have some links on videos on YouTube as a starting point. Of course, most things that we are actually providing in terms of workshops and so on, they are also findable on our YouTube. And yeah, you can find us on the web page here. About the certification and assessment, yeah, how does this work? Like, people register to a test, to this exam, to a certificate, they receive an email, then they take anytime basically a test online. We have two types of tests that we offer: a multiple choice exam and a scenario-based learning. In this one, you will get an SSH login in a browser, which is connected to a Docker environment where you have to show that you can solve certain tasks. How you solve the tasks is basically up to you, but you have to solve them. And for this multiple choice exam, we pick stuff randomly from a pool. Then this results get submitted to a web server, which approves this response, verifies that everything is correct, of course, and then we create a certificate and return it by email. This also includes a computer verifiable proof with a GPG signature and a link that allows people to give it to an employer and so on to show that they actually have it. We take care of privacy issues. We store minimal information on the servers. We keep only the institution for statistical purpose. And we included, of course, in these processes, some measures to prevent cheating and brute forcing, such as delays and so on. So here, when you register, you get a disclaimer. I don't want to go through it, but the disclaimer is kind of already used. It describes exactly how it works. It's a privacy statement. Once you have filled in your data, you get this email. You can, in this case here, click on multiple choice exam or the scenario-based examination. And it says again, you know, this is for the certificate Linux Basics, use 1.1b command line interface. By the way, this is a certificate. We wouldn't want to do a certificate for such a fine-grained level. We would rather have coarse-grained certificates. However, due to time constraints, you know, for demonstration purpose, we were only able so far to get this one done. And then if you click on the scenario, you get basically a web page, which is on this left side here, which links to a uniquely created PDF. So you can have different types of questions per person, for instance, with different tasks. And then you get a link to a sandbox, which opens this window here in the bottom, which is our kind of SSH terminal. And then you can do your task. And this one here, you know, is just an example. It just, you know, in this case, people have to terminate a rogue program, and it explains a little bit more because the skill didn't cover how to use the PS tool. It just covered like using the command line as a basic. So these tools were excluded from the skill. That's why we had to provide a little bit extra information. And then this tests obviously for a certain learning objective. And then this is the multiple choice exam. Just some examples shown. And one key issue, why did we choose this one? Is in the command line, we find often that people can't close editors. So a lot of people in, I would say, 4 meetings, it was always found, and birds of a feather sessions that we had as SC and ISC, it was always found that we should talk about closing these kind of editors such as VI, Emacs, and Nano, because these are widely spread. That's why we put this into the skill, by the way, and that's why we examine for it. So the questions here stem from a pool. It needs to be sufficiently large, obviously, that you can't brute force the answer, and there are questions per learning objective. And questions can be correct or incorrect, and people can say, I don't know the answer, which is here basically what is unknown, because if you select it wrongly, then you get more deducted than if you don't know anything about it, in fact. Yeah, then we have the certificate that is handed over. Here we have the GPG kind of text that people get, and then they would get this sample certificate in this case. And you see we had the certificates we had created 2019 already. We had these prototypes, but what was new was kind of this scenario-based learning, which we pulled last. Regarding adoption, I will quickly say we had positive feedbacks regularly, and we talked a lot to people at BOFs, at supercomputing and the International Supercomputing Conference, and a lot of various tier 2 centers in Germany use now the classification that we created. For example, at ZEH Dresden, of course, my institution, the GWDG, uses it, Mainz, and so on. We have an informal agreement between all the trainers in the NHR training community, which is this tier 2 in Germany of 9 centers, that we in fact agreed that we all will use it, but it takes a little bit more time that actually everyone understands sufficiently about it and can use it. And we had various discussions with tier 1 and tier 3 centers in Germany and also international. We had quite some collaboration with the SICA HPC EGDU. And yeah, here are some links where you can see how they use it to reference to it. In terms of outlook, we want to include more NHR centers because we basically have this informal agreement and discussions that they use it as a competence standard to link to it. We want to have more expert adopted skills. Regarding this, we have about, I think, 10 skills where people said, I will curate it. So from different, for example, this PCAR is a tool from ZEH, for instance, and they created the skill and they maintain the skill. Yes, about the quality of these skills is a different level, but I'll talk about this in a minute. But what we ultimately aim to do is to have a HPC driving license, we call it, where we have basic skills and have all the assessment ready for it. And for this one, we want to do, of course, the certification for real users that have this kind of driving license. We are at the moment on a private server. We want to move to another server, hosted server. We will do more events, of course, more workshops, and hopefully we get some funding for the activity and more collaboration. That brings me to the needs of the HPC CF. At the moment, and for the last 4 years, basically, all our activities are on voluntary basis. This is very slow. Yeah, why do we still contribute to it, and why do we have international people on the panel and so on? Because we actually believe this is a good way forward. And yeah, we don't give up on it, but we struggle because there was no funding. We were hoping, like last year, there was a funding activity in, I think, in the Horizon. Or no, 2 years ago should have been in the Horizon funding activity, but it wasn't coming out, a support activity. We were looking to submit there. What we would need to, I think, make more progress, substantial progress, I think it would be essential that we have one advisor person that would help creating and curating skills. We often, when you talk to people that are practitioners, they don't know about learning objectives. How do you write learning objectives? How do you write a proper formulation of this competence skill, a single skill? How do you write this down that it is useful to other people? And this requires a lot of interaction and takes more time than one would think. And we would also want to organize, of course, more workshops to train the trainers basically to write those skills, to educate them how to formulate these skills, and videos in YouTube. We have very basic ones, except from our workshops. It would be nice and in that sense desirable to have a technician to support the development of the ecosystem, because we have basically prototypes for more. I mean, we believe for everything that we need at this point, we have prototypes. But to make the prototype ready for production, you need to do security analysis, you need to deploy it, and you need to do those things. And as we are on voluntary basis, we don't have the time to do it. That's a problem. We like to have official endorsement by more data centers and programs. I think, you know, the joint undertaking with HPC would be great. And of course, to have collaboration and contribution by programs to skills would be great as well, right? That people say, okay, I will write a couple of skills and I will put it up. Again, I think with having 10 different skills now by these adopters, it's not a problem that people wouldn't be willing to do it. The problem is the quality you get is basically very low. And you have to spend a couple of hours, more hours, days, and talk then with people again to make sure that what you do is the right thing, because these people, they are mostly technicians and they don't know how to do education. And of course, it would be desirable to support organizing Birds of a Feather sessions, workshops, and so on. And yeah, we will expand our server infrastructure to another home. At some point, we will do this regardless of funding, so that, and we will of course make progress regardless of funding, but it will again be slow. But to wrap up, I'd say for me, the outlook and the expected benefits of this is that for HPC practitioners, you get the certificates. You can show that you have the certain skills that are recognized, and you can put them in the CV with good knowledge. You can validate your knowledge via tests, such that there are some people that struggle because they believe they don't have the skills. And then there are other people, right, that overestimate their skill set and say, I know everything about MPI. And then you ask them a simple question and they don't know anything, in fact. So this kind of level can only be ensured if we have this kind of certificates that we can validate the levels. And practitioners need to browse relevant competencies. They need to know what is necessary, particularly when it comes to skills related to certain tasks. So what we think is that what will happen once we have this map up, then if you are, for example, a developer of Chromex, why not say on your webpage, if you want to use Chromex, please use, according to HPCCF, the following skills. You need to know these use skills, and then you are able to run Chromex. If you want to contribute to our development, it would be great. You need those 5 more skills, for example, right? That would be really useful, and it makes it much more transparent what is necessary for a certain role. Yeah, also it would be useful because you can compare teaching across sites, right? I mean, you can have someone in, I don't know, in Britain that teaches something about Slurm, and you have someone in Germany teaching something about Slurm. And then you say, okay, both teach maybe the basic course, and then they teach maybe site-specific aspects. And now the basics, when both teach the basics, yeah, if you move from the UK to Germany and you want to use this data center, then, well, you don't have to learn the basics again, but you need to learn the specifics still, right? So things don't get blurred. As a data centers, maybe we can increase the sharing of teaching materials because it's more clear what we are actually teaching now. And we can document the skills we are teaching, because we can say these are the skills according to our classification. We can identify if we have missing teaching activities that a lot of other data centers have that increase productivity. We can have the skill representation specifically to users. I have Slurm, you have, I don't know, LSF. So you need this skill, we need that skill, and this is what users need to know. Also, I'm very interested, of course, to use machine learning and other means of analysis to correlate the lack of skills with efficient use. Basically, I imagine in the future what we need to do to make good use of HPC system would be, we see that certain errors are, for example, happening by users, and then we could say to the user, look, you wasted here this 3 hours by trying to figure this out. If you attend our 4-hour course, the next couple of times you will be twice as efficient or something like this and don't have to waste so much time. So you can imagine there is a lot of potential here, and I want to absolutely use this for our center. So to wrap up, the HPC certification program is an effort to standardize the representation and certification of relevant HPC skills. We do have this hierarchical definition of skills for practitioners, building blocks that can be cherry-picked for different tasks. It's not that we provide the content and do not compete with anyone. We want that everyone can do their content. We want just to help to map it out, and we do not want to support a linear curriculum. We want to have this map of puzzle map of things, of individual skills. For data centers, maybe you want to make certain skills a mandatory requirement for large-scale deployments. Maybe you want to find out how to educate the users better. We have this customizable representation and navigation for data centers and a lot of stuff such as interactive stuff and tools. Yeah, we want to link, for example, good content as well. We imagine at some point people say, okay, for this skill, we have this training material. Someone else says in a different language, in Chinese, I have this. I don't know, in Portuguese, we have that material, and it's all great. And then the users, it all comes together and on the web page and it's linked. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Julian, for the presentation and for the overview. Before we go to the questions, then I will switch the recording.